Why do some people seem naturally disciplined with money, while others struggle no matter how much they earn? It is easy to believe the difference is income luck or opportunity. But research in behavioral psychology shows something very different. The way people spend money is not controlled by logic alone. It is controlled by habits, emotional triggers, and learned patterns stored deep inside the brain. In Japanese culture, financial discipline is not something people force themselves to do. It is something that emerges from small daily behaviors repeated over time. These behaviors are simple, almost invisible, but they shape how the brain makes decisions. And once you understand these patterns, you start to realize that managing money is less about willpower and more about awareness. The first habit is Kakeibo, which is a traditional Japanese method of managing money. But more importantly, it is a psychological tool for conscious decision-making instead of blindly spending. People ask themselves questions before every purchase. Do I need this? Can I afford this? Will it truly improve my life? This process activates the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for rational thinking and long-term planning. Normally, when you see something attractive, your brain releases dopamine, which creates an impulse to act immediately. But when you introduce questions, you interrupt that dopamine loop and bring logic back into the decision in everyday life. This might look like opening an online store, seeing something you want, and instead of clicking buy, you pause and ask yourself if it really adds value. Most of the time, that pause reduces the urge, and over time your brain learns to associate spending with thinking instead of reacting. The second habit is based on the concept of hara hachibu, which originally comes from eating behavior, where people stop at 80% full. But psychologically, this idea applies to money as well. It teaches controlled consumption. Just because you have the ability to spend does not mean you should use all of it. Behavioral economics shows that humans tend to use available resources fully, which is why people often spend everything they earn. But when you create an intentional limit below your maximum, you build a buffer that protects you from impulsive decisions in real life. This could mean deciding to spend only a portion of your income, even when you could afford more. This creates a habit of restraint and trains your brain to operate within boundaries instead of extremes. The third habit is the concept of ma, which represents space or pause, and this is one of the most powerful psychological tools for controlling behavior. Most financial mistakes happen in moments of emotional impulse, when the limbic system takes control and overrides logical thinking by creating a pause. Even for a few seconds, you allow the prefrontal cortex to re-engage. Neuroscience shows that emotional impulses are short-lived, but actions taken during those impulses can have long-term consequences in real life. This might look like adding something to your cart, but waiting before completing the purchase. You might step away, close the app, or give yourself time to think. This delay weakens the emotional urgency and allows you to make a more balanced decision over time. This simple habit can dramatically reduce unnecessary spending. The fourth habit is minimalism, which in Japanese culture is not about deprivation, but about intentional living. The brain naturally seeks novelty, which is why people are drawn to buying new things, but minimalism shifts focus from quantity to meaning. When you reduce the number of possessions, you increase the value of what you keep. This reduces the constant desire to acquire more in everyday life. This could mean buying fewer items, but choosing higher quality or removing things that no longer serve a purpose. This creates both physical and mental clarity, and when your environment is less cluttered, your decision-making becomes more focused. The fifth habit is Kaizen, which is the principle of continuous improvement through small steps. From a psychological perspective, this aligns with habit formation theory, where small, consistent actions are more sustainable than large, sudden changes. Instead of trying to completely change financial behavior, overnight, people focus on improving, gradually saving a little more each day, Reducing small expenses, becoming slightly more aware of spending. These actions may seem insignificant, but they create a feedback loop in the brain. Each small success releases dopamine, reinforcing the behavior over time. These small improvements compound into major changes in real life. This might be choosing to skip one unnecessary purchase or tracking your spending for a few minutes each day. These actions slowly reshape your habits without creating resistance. The sixth habit is respect for money, which influences behavior at a deeper level than most people realize. In psychology, the way you perceive something determines how you interact with it. When money is seen as valuable and meaningful, people treat it with care. But when it is seen as something to quickly spend, behavior becomes careless. In Japanese culture, money is often handled with intention and awareness, which creates a sense of responsibility in real life. This could mean keeping track of where your money goes, avoiding waste, and making thoughtful decisions. This mindset reduces impulsive behavior and increases long-term planning. The seventh habit is avoiding emotional spending, which is one of the biggest challenges in modern society. Many financial decisions are driven by emotional states such as stress, boredom, or anxiety. This is because the brain seeks quick rewards to regulate mood. Buying something creates a temporary sense of relief, but it does not solve the underlying issue over time. This creates a cycle where emotions trigger spending, and spending reinforces emotional dependency. Japanese psychological habits emphasize separating emotion from financial decisions in real life. This might mean recognizing when you feel the urge to spend because of stress and choosing to pause. Instead, you might take a walk, reflect, or give yourself time before acting. This breaks the connection between emotion and spending. The eighth habit is long-term thinking, which is deeply rooted in Japanese culture. Instead of focusing on immediate gratification, people consider future outcomes. This aligns with research in delayed gratification, which shows that the ability to wait for a larger future reward leads to better life outcomes. When you think long-term, you evaluate decisions differently. You ask whether a purchase will still matter in the future or whether it is just a temporary desire in real life. This could mean choosing to save money, invest in something meaningful, or avoid unnecessary expenses. This mindset protects you from impulsive behavior and builds stability over time. When you combine all of these habits, you begin to see a clear pattern. Financial discipline is not about restriction or forcing yourself to save money. It is about training your mind to think differently. Each habit targets a specific psychological mechanism, whether it is impulse control, emotional regulation, or decision-making, and together they create a system where good financial behavior becomes natural. The most important thing to understand is that change does not happen instantly. The brain builds habits through repetition, each time you pause before spending, each time you question a purchase, each time you choose long-term thinking over short-term desire. You are rewiring your brain over time. These small changes accumulate, and your relationship with money transforms. You no longer feel controlled by impulses. You no longer feel pressure to spend. Instead, you feel aware, in control, and intentional, and that is the real meaning of effortless financial discipline. Not forcing yourself to change, but becoming the kind of person who naturally makes better decisions. Because in the end, it is not about how much money you have, it is about how your mind works. And once you change the way you think, everything else follows.